God förmiddag allihopa och sorry, I wasn't Swedish. Good morning everybody and welcome back to the day 2 of the Netnod meeting. Looking at the amount of people here, it looks like you had a good time yesterday evening. Is that the correct assessment? The others have a better time? Or whatever. No, but I'm really happy. I thought it was a good place. I thought it was nice food and everything. I don't know what you thought. All? You liked it? Yep. So today we're going to continue with a couple more of the interesting talks. And the next one in line, fiddling with the presentation from stage this time, is Lars-Johan Liman, who's actually going to talk about a quite exciting event that happened here. And it was not that Netnod was 20 years, because that exciting event Patrick already talked about. But Lars-Johan is going to talk about the IANA transition and what really happened and how do we take it from there, I guess. So over to Liman.
Hello, good morning to you from me as well. So I am going to do a very quick and rough overview of the IANA, ICANN and NTIA thingy that just recently took place. Excuse me, I was there yesterday as well. So please, can someone get me some water up here, please? There are water containers over there. The past two years have been quite interesting for those of us who are involved in internet governance. I should introduce myself as well. I'm Lars-Johan Liman, if you missed that earlier, and I'm a senior system specialist at Netnod, and I've been so for a good number of years. I even was there writing the bylaws for the company way back in 1995-96. And recently I've been involved in this stewardship transition, which is the formal term for it. So going back a bit, the US government has always been involved in funding, leading, coordinating, and to some extent also controlling the internet. Let me see if I can get a better picture up here. No, I can't. Interesting. And it's done so mainly, initially at least, by funding. Internet is the result of research funded by ARPA, the Advanced Research Projects Agency. So it started out as a defense project, the defense system funding universities to do the research. Later on through the National Science Foundation, who took over the operation of the initial versions of the internet. And this funding extended not only to technical operation and research, but also to the administration of the network, because as soon as you start to work, you will have administrative tasks that need to be handled. And the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, IANA, was created, and if you kind of zoom out, it has 3 major legs of operation that it does. It handles the IP addresses, and we're talking about the entire pool of IP addresses for the entire world. It handles protocol parameters. We have lots of port numbers that need to be standardized. We have protocol parameters telling, for instance, the content in your email messages, what is it, and it needs to be standardized so that both sides agree on the content types and other stuff. And we also have the domain names, and this is primarily for the top-level domain, the level under root. So we have the national top-level domains, SE, NO, FI, DE, UK, and so on. And we have the generic top-level domains, .com, net, org, museum, biz, info, and a whole slew of new GTLDs that are emerging as we speak. So IANA was operated by John Pastell and a very small number of associates, and that was kept that way until the mid-1990s, when the internet started to grow, and even John himself realized that we cannot have this administration hinge on one single person. It doesn't work. So he started to create he was one driving force behind creating a multi-stakeholder organization that turned into ICANN. Problem was he suddenly died. So there was a bit of vacuum there, and that it was difficult maintaining the speed and direction in the creation of this organization. But eventually it was created. So ICANN today are three things. It's a policy setting body, so it's a place where people can discuss and get together and agree on policy for domain names. It's a corporation that implements this policy for domain names and also is the holder of the IANA function. And the IANA function services three, well, we talk about the direct customers, so it's three direct customers regarding protocols, numbers, and names. And the US maintained the influence of the IANA operations by a contract. In the beginning, it was a contract between the National Science Foundation, I believe, and the IANA, and later on they decided to step out of that contract, and it was taken over by the National Telecommunication and Information Administration of the United States Department of Commerce. NTIA for short. So they had a contract with ICANN, and they were also top of the appeals chain. If someone was unhappy with the decision taken by the IANA, they could appeal and eventually would reach the NTIA, who would have the final say in this. And also the NTIA approved all, and yes, that's all, material changes to the root zone. Not small things like new signatures for records or changing the serial number of the SOA, but every material change of records in the root zone were actually approved by the NTIA before being implemented into the root zone. And this has been seen as undue influence over the operation of the internet by one one single government, and there's been discussions back and forth, and much of the internet governance arena has agreed with that thought, that it's undue that one single government should have that influence. So, the beginning of the end. In March, if I remember correctly, March 2014, the NTIA declared that they were willing to let the contract expire. And they had a contract actually with ICANN, the corporation, regarding the operation of the IANA. And that contract specifies the roles of NTIA and IANA and the relationships and so on. And they were willing to let that contract expire without renewing it, under the condition that there was a viable alternative for last resort and for checking the content of the root zone and for doing these operations that the NTIA did. So NTIA gave ICANN the job to create an international multi-stakeholder alternative, and gave them a timeline of roughly 2 years. And there were certain conditions in this task. So it had to be a multi-stakeholder model, it mustn't be controlled by any single government, and there were a number of bullets that the proposal would have to contain in order to be accepted as a viable alternative. Now, ICANN decided to work with the established relationships between the IANA and the three primary customers, and we'll get more to that later, and try to find where does the model we have already work, and where do we need to put in extra checks and balances to replace or complement where the NTIA did its work before. So ICANN created, this is another hideous acronym, the IANA Stewardship Transition Coordination Group. And IANA is, of course, an acronym in itself. So this is ICG, and it had members from the various stakeholder communities. So if we look at the picture roughly like this, we have in green at the top, we have the various name-related organizations. ICANN is built up from supporting organizations and advisory committees, and there are three that I would characterize as name supporting organization. There are the official, the country code name supporting organization and the generic name supporting organization, CCNSO and GNSO. There's also the at-large advisory committee, which is an open place for virtually everyone who wants to participate. The CCNSO is specifically for the SEC TLD registries. The GNSO is for the generic names registries. ALAC is a more open place for users and other business people to participate in the discussions. There, at the ICG, there were also representatives from the numbering part of the world. So we had the address supporting organization, which is one of the legs of ICANN, where people who distribute IP addresses work. So this is built up mainly by actually the NRO, the Number Resource Organization, which in turn stands on its 5 legs for the regional internet registries. We have the RIPE NCC in Europe, we have ARIN in North America, we have LACNIC in South America, we have AFRINIC in Africa, and APNIC in the Asia Pacific region. And these all work together through the Number Resource Organization. And then we have the protocol part. We have the Internet Engineering Task Force, the standards body. We have the Internet Architecture Board, which is the overview of the ITF. We also had ISOC, who is the funding member of the ITF circles, or rather the what's the appropriate term in English? The body, the legal body behind the ITF that secures financial processes and makes sure that copyrights are going the right way and so on. And also an organization for internet users in various parts of the world. So this is a very important contributor to these discussions. On the left-hand side, we have various advisory committees, which were technical and political experts in various ways. We have the System and Stability Advisory Committee, which is a committee that gives advice to the ICANN board and the internet in general. We have RSAC, which is the Root Server System Advisory Committee, which is very focused on the root server system and advises the board and the general internet. And we have the Government Advisory Committee, which gives advice to the ICANN board regarding government issues. And then we had some business-related people at the bottom. We had the International Chamber of Commerce and the Registry Stakeholder Group. Because they are not it's probably the Registrar Group, because they are not represented elsewhere. Sorry for that. The registrars who work with the registries registering domain names. So this was a rather large group, and this was put together by ICANN, and we were actually fortunate to have people in there. I was there representing RSAC, Patrick was there representing SSAC, and he was also one of the 3 co-chairs of this working group. So we felt that we had a good chance to influence this. The work plan for the ICG was actually rather simple. The idea was to work with the existing procedures and relationships that were already in place between the IANA and these various bodies, and also to extend requests for proposals to the 3 major customers, which were the ITF, the Number Resource Organization, and actually ICANN in the role of being the policy body for setting names. In the top-level domain, for the domain name policy side. And then, once these proposals were received, to coordinate them and try to identify where there were incompatibilities between the various 3 proposals, and then not try to merge them ourselves in ICG, but rather to go to the parties involved, say, hey, you propose this, you propose that, and that's not compatible. Can you talk to each other and see if you can find some middle ground here? So that we didn't have to do the work, nor take the responsibility. And eventually then have 3, hopefully, negotiated working proposals come, and then put them all together and submit that to the NTIA. And then sit back and relax. Now, you note here that there is actually no decision by the ICANN board involved. So the ICANN board was not involved in the submission process to the NTIA. They were informed, but they were not allowed to make a decision or to veto the proposal. So IANA facilitated this ICG group and then gave it the task, you guys in ICG, you shall give the proposal to the NTIA. And that's the proper way to create a multi-stakeholder group for creating this proposal. So this is what it looked like in extremely simple graphics. So the ICG was talking to 3 parties, because each of these, let me see here, where are we? Here, the IETF, the NRO, and ICANN, all 3 parties created their own processes for creating their own proposals. And they also had to be multi-stakeholder. So the IETF and the IAB created an IETF working group, because that's the process for being multi-stakeholder and create openness in the IETF. So they created a working group, an open working group called IANA Plan, where discussions were held, where they wrote the document as an internet draft, eventually an RFC, because that's how you document things in the IETF circles. So they had used their own procedures to generate their proposal. Within the numbering organizations, the 5 RIRs, RIPE, NCC, LACNIC, APNIC, AFRINIC, and ARIN, created a common working group called CRISP. Fortunately, we also had people there. Nurani was one of the co-chairs of CRISP. And they created their numbering proposal using their procedures and also relying on the existing relationships with IANA that they already had. And ICANN, the policy discussing body of ICANN, created a cross-community working group, meaning they involved all the various bodies of ICANN into one working group to create their named proposal. But they actually did a second thing, because they realized that they were the ones who didn't have enough proper procedures in place. The numbering organization and the protocol organizations, they already had quite well-working relationships, and there were documents written regarding this that they can rely on. But IANA had some legwork to do, and they did 2 things: develop a proposal, but also they started to firm up their own internal procedures regarding this, which was a separate cross-community working group regarding its own accountability. You will notice, as I did, that there's one is called CWG and the other one is CCWG, and that's just how kind of messed up the internals in ICANN are. They don't even have a stringent acronym system for their own working groups. And if we shift this slightly to the right, on the other side, we talk to the NTIA directly from the ICG. And going back, we actually even, you could say that there was a small footprint of Netnod also in the, let me see, it was either the CWG or the CCWG, and I will excuse myself here because one of our board members, Mathieu Weil, was involved there. Maybe Stefan, maybe you remember which one of the working group he was co-chairing. Yeah, that's probably it. Thank you. All right, so the proposal ended up something like this, and this is the most simple infographics you will ever see regarding this. The idea here is to create a PTI. That's the working name for it. This is the post-transition IANA. So this will be an IANA in its own separate organization that will be hosted or owned, or how you want to phrase that, by ICANN, the corporation. Now, ICANN is a twofold thing. It is the corporation and it's the policy setting body. And ICANN will interact with the PTI in 2 ways. One is the hosting the organization, the PTI organization, and the other one is actually interacting with it as the names policy setting body. And then we have relationships between the IETF and those circles with the PTI for protocol things, and then we have NRO interactions with PTI regarding number of things. And those 2 latter ones, IETF and NRO, they are virtually unchanged. There's not much change to the already existing stuff. But there are some new checks and balances put in place so that the NTIA has already stepped out as the last resort for appeals. So there are another appeals path put in place, at least for the ITF side. So we have the Internet Architecture Board looking at overseeing the relationship between ITF and PDI, and there's also a new committee created for the NRO relationship, and I don't remember the name of that one. Unfortunately, Norana is not here to remind me. In addition to all that, two new bodies are designed, the CSC and the RZERC. Acronyms, oh, love them. So the CSC is the Customer Standing Committee. It's a body with representatives from the 3 major customers, and these are, in this picture, ICANN, ITF, and NRO. They are seen as in this terminology, they are the 3 customers of the services that the IANA perform. IANA is just an administrative service. It keeps the tables, it keeps the databases for these 3 purposes. And if the PDI doesn't perform well, the Customer Standing Committee can be an appeals way. It can actually intervene and look at contracts and so on. And it's an overlooking body to make sure that everything is working well from an administrative standpoint. I happen to be a part of CSC. It's a newly started committee, and the first meeting will actually be tonight. So that's a rather small committee. We're something like 8 or 10 people. The RZERC is a technical committee, more of a technical committee, and it's the root zone evolution review committee. So if the community wants to add new features to the root zone, and we're not talking about adding another top-level domain, because that's just run-of-the-mill stuff. But if they want to make changes to the system, either of root servers or the content of the root zone, to the root zone, changes to the root zone. And this could be add support for IPv6 was one such change in the past. Another one was adding DNSSEC, secure DNS. These are transitions in the root zone system. If someone wants to make that type of change to the root zone in the future, RZERC will be involved, and there is a group of technical experts that will look and investigate and see if this is a viable path forward and recommend how to proceed. So this is the very simple graphics regarding this. Here are your acronyms if you want to look them up. Okay, the plan actually worked. The NTIA accepted the proposal as following the specs. You remember there were certain criteria that needed to be fulfilled, and it was deemed that the ICG proposal actually did fulfill them. The NTIA brooded over the proposal for a while, and then gave it the thumbs up. Then US politics got nasty, and I'm going to fast forward that because you read all about that in your Facebook flow. But it included a last-minute lawsuit from a couple of states, and we're talking about last minutes here, almost. So it was down to hours before the contract expired. But eventually the US court said, no, we're not going to bother with that. Which meant that NTIA could step back and refrain from renewing the contract, which means that it expired on September 30th, and we are now on our own. The NTIA has stepped back and released the control over the names process and operations of the IANA. So this is now in the hands of the Internet multi-stakeholder community, and this is actually a very, very good step forward for Internet democracy, in my personal view. And it's taken a really long time. ICANN was created back in 1998. It was expected that this thing would happen. It was always the plan that the NTIA would hand over the control, so to speak, to ICANN. And then it was planned to happen by the year 2000. We're just 15 years behind schedule, but we've actually reached that point now. So this is actually a good and big step. And as a result, no government has unique control over the operations and administration of the internet as of now. Technically, as of October 1st, the only thing that happened technically is that NTIA no longer approves every change to the root zone. They step back. And for root service, it's the same thing. Nothing happened. No root server operator that I'm aware of has made any change to anything in the root serving role. And that includes, as far as I know, I speak only for Netnod, but as far as I know, no root server operator has made any change to their commitments to the internet community regarding root service, and Netnod certainly reaffirms its commitment to continue to serve the root service as it's been in the past. No changes there. And that's what's happened on October 1st. Oh, one more thing. The root zone is now signed using a 2048-bit key. Previously it was 1024. That happened on October 1st. Did you notice? Did you notice? Yeah, but you didn't notice the change in the zone. Good, because that meant that we managed to rebuild the aircraft in flight. So that's what happened on October 1st. Thank you.